Thank you for joining me for another episode of Beyond Insights. Today we are joined by Jameel Khan. Jameel is a chartered accountant in South Africa, a mentor, business coach, and recovering addict who is committed to inspiring entrepreneurs with his story of hope and purpose to make a positive, sustainable, and purpose-driven impact by holistically supporting entrepreneurs and their businesses. His journey started in 2016 when he came out of rehabilitation after struggling with addiction. At this point, he was already on his way to becoming a chartered accountant, and thus continued the journey which provided him with purpose and hope for a better future. More recently, he decided to take a leap of faith and pursue his passion for helping others and co-founded the Unconventional CA, an entrepreneur and venture building organization.
You're listening to Beyond Insights, your go-to podcast for all things accounting, business, and technology.
From cybersecurity and AI innovations to sustainability and work-life balance, we've got you covered.
We host insightful guests from different backgrounds, industries, and locations all around the world.
From this diversity of thought, we aim to find solutions to some of our most pressing business problems.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive right in and go beyond insights.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of Beyond Insights. Today I am joined by Jameel Khan, who is a chartered accountant, mentor, business coach, and also recovering addict who's committed to inspiring entrepreneurs with his story of hope and purpose to make a positive, sustainable, and purpose-driven impact by holistically supporting entrepreneurs and their businesses. So Jameel's journey started in 2016 when he came out of rehabilitation after struggling with addiction. At this point, he was already on his way to becoming a chartered accountant, and so he continued the journey, which provided him with purpose and hope for a better future. More recently, he decided to take a leap of faith and pursue his passion for helping others, and he co-founded the Unconventional CA. So he's become an entrepreneur and venture building organization. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jameel.
Awesome.
Really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my story with the listeners on the podcast as well.
Awesome. And one other thing I think I forgot to mention is that Jameel was also a top 35 under 35 finalist for SAICA.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. It's already a year ago now. I was actually looking at the new batch of top 35 under 35, but yeah, it was a really awesome experience. Got to meet awesome people and as well as Jodie Lee.
Yes, awesome. And that is how you ended up here today, the
100%.
connection with Jodie Lee.
100%.
So we're diving right into the difficult questions now.
Perfect.
But your personal story is really one about overcoming adversity, overcoming addiction, and finding hope through all of that for a better future. So I was wondering, what advice would you give people who are going through a similar circumstance to try and overcome obstacles and find hope again?
Deep question to start with, but we'll get straight into the meat of it. Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? I think the first piece of advice that I always give people is, if you're struggling with something, know that you're not alone. I felt
Yes.
when it came to addiction, when it comes to general emotional issues, we always tend to feel alone. We tend to feel like, we're struggling with this, we can't share, we're not good enough. And then once it starts to go more and more internal, that's when sort of the problem cascades. So no matter what you're struggling with, your first step is to know that you're not alone. And I feel like it took me a while to get there, but then actually getting there helped me to then seek out help, and taking that first step into seeking out help was actually like when the weight of the burden, of what I was going through kind of lifted off my shoulders, when I realized that, hey, I'm not a bad person. There's other people going through the same struggle, and I always tell people that's the first step, is to know if you have this issue, you are not alone.
Yeah, definitely. And to reach out to help.
Yeah.
For help.
100%. So regardless of what the adversity is or what the issue is, firstly, know that you're not alone. And then secondly, tell a loved person, tell somebody who you trust, what is it that you're going through? Because I found, like, for me, that was where the support structure kicked in, because I guess mentally I wasn't in a state to actually go and seek out the help actively. But taking that first step, confiding in someone, they will help you find what sort of help and connect the dots for you to take you out of that.
Someone to kind of help you share the burden in a way.
Yeah, 100%. Like, what do they say? Like a problem shared is a problem divided.
Yes.
Which is so, like, true. When it comes to problems, when we do speak to someone, and I guess that's the premise of group therapy as well.
Yes.
Sharing in the setting of what you're going through, listening to other people going through the same thing. That's where it takes that burden off you. Where, once again, like we said, initially you feel lonely, and then that burden feels heavy. And then once you share, that burden then divides, and it was the journey to healing sort of starts then.
Do you have any specific sort of strategies or practices that people can implement?
Oh, interesting question. To overcome adversity.
I mean, a bit of a broad one. I know the first thing you mentioned is sharing with other people, but are there sort of other things that people can do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, broadly speaking, when it comes to addiction, any addiction for that, there's the 12-step program. And I enjoyed, like, the 12 steps, right? I mean, it's, the first step was to, firstly admit that you have a problem, or admit, and you actually admitting it to yourself. I always found, like, people are like, they're in that state of denial for very long, that I have a problem, because they feel like if they do share they have a problem, people are going to look at them in a certain way, right? So
yes, and they're going to be judged.
100%. So we tend to stay in that state of denial, thinking that we're protecting ourselves, when actually that state of denial is, probably a mechanism that we need to overcome to start healing, to start moving forward. So that's sort of the first step. And then the second step is, I haven't practiced the 12 steps in a while, but it was about understanding that there's a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity. So I like that, because it wasn't tied into, like, we all have different religions, some people don't have religion. It was more about, what do you feel is that power that is bigger than you, that you can then rely on to then say, hey, like, whatever it might be, God, whoever it might be, help, kind of help me through the situation. And a lot of people are religious, so it's nice how it kind of interlinks that way. So I do think the 12-step program was a good program. I think whatever adversity you're struggling with, like I said, like we've said already, right? The first thing is to share with someone that you trust, and then to see what solutions exist out there, and to just take the first step. The other thing that was that I'd like to share as part of the 12-step program was taking each it's one day at a time. So just for today, I'll make it through today, and breaking it up into those bite-sized pieces helped a lot, because especially when you're going through adversity or problems, our mind tends to multiply that, right? To say, okay, we're starting with this problem, but actually it's going to turn into this huge problem.
Yes.
And then we tend not to take that first step.
You kind of catastrophize everything.
100%. And so just take it one day at a time and just start there.
That's really interesting. It also makes me think of, I think it's the 7 stages of grief. The first thing is also to move out of denial and to actually acknowledge that you are grieving. So I think they work quite similarly.
100%. Actually, one of the things that we were told in that first, probably the first few engagements is, in as much as it's like a drug addiction, you have to let go of this drug. You have to mourn the loss.
Yes.
And you have to go through those stages of grief, because in as much as it's bad for you, it was something which was serving as a crutch for you. And so removing that is actually a loss, which was very at the time, very insightful.
Yeah, very interesting. So even if it's something that's really bad for your life, it is a coping mechanism that you were using, and you have to like say goodbye to that.
100%, 100%. Yeah.
And in terms of building up resilience, because I'm sure that that's a big part of overcoming addiction and overcoming obstacles in general, what role did you find that your community, whether part of the 12-step program or otherwise, played in that?
Oh, building resilience, eh? I think they definitely played the support structures that you put in place play a really big role in that. But I think the resilience part of it was, coming out of rehab, I told myself that I felt actually that, like this was kind of a battle with myself internally. And if, by getting through that, no problem going forward can be as insurmountable as this felt, having an internal struggle with yourself. So I think that perspective and mind shift was the initial quite a big building block into being more resilient. Used to say, well, regardless of what else life throws, if you can solve this and you can figure it out with yourself, everything else you can probably find a solution for. So I think talking about resilience, that was probably the biggest thing, was to say, as long as I keep clean and sober, everything else will fall into place. And I imagine for a lot of like listeners out there, if you are going through some sort of adversity and it's been something that you've been going through for a while, it's almost as though the longer you're in it, the more deeper you're going.
Yes.
But on the other side of that, once you bring yourself out of that, it's gonna the problem in itself has probably built a lot of resilience. So coming out of that, you'll certainly find other challenges a bit easier to overcome, depending on how deep the initial challenge is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose because you've built those sort of problem-solving skills and the ability to think, okay, every day I'm taking this one day at a time. So every day you're thinking, today I'm going to make sure I stay clean or I stay sober. And I think that builds up that tool or that skill, that resilience, so that you can then apply it to other problems, as you say.
Yeah, definitely. Just adding on what you're saying as well, it's addiction and a lot of the adversity or depression, all of that stuff, especially when you're facing problems that's between you and yourself, right? I feel like you kind of sometimes tend to feel like it's insurmountable initially, but then you stop sort of trusting yourself, right? Because you're trying to fix it internally in your mind every day and it's not working. And so and that's where the support community came in, the 12-step program came in, was to say, your best intelligence couldn't help you fix this problem. So you got to allow someone in, you got to allow an external force in to help you overcome this adversity. And so when you get to the other side and then you allow that, it's almost like you're kind of starting with a bit of a blank slate to say, well, I don't know it all, right?
Yes.
And now this is working. So then from then on, you become a little bit more empathetic, I feel. You listen more, you're a bit more receptive to stuff. And so, the journey just goes upwards from then.
And this journey led to you starting your own business.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, eh? I mean, I felt like coming out of addiction and all of that was also quite interlinked with when I was lucky I wrote my board exams in terms of sobriety, which, I don't know how, but by the grace of God, I made it through then. And then I was like, okay, cool, now I'm a CA, cool, which helped a lot, right? The purpose part, I felt there were a lot of colleagues with me, in rehab that didn't necessarily have a direction in life. And so every time they left, they tried one or two things and then they ended up back. Whereas for me, it was like, okay, cool, now you're already becoming a CA, you're building a career, there was some sort of purpose to focus on.
Yes.
Now, linking that into sort of the 12-step program, right? One of the things is, addiction is like a major issue worldwide, right? Like to make it to 5 years clean is like a less than 1% probability.
Wow.
Right? And like being numbers people, it was like, okay, I need to try and inculcate as much of the stuff that's going to get me there as I can. So one of the things is, finding purpose, but finding purpose in serving others. If you can find that, that increases the chances of you actually staying recovered, or whatever it might be. And so from then I thought, what is it that I can do that can be in service of others?
Yes.
But at that time I didn't know it yet, because I still I ended up then going to SAICA and working. So it did take time to find that. But then once I sort of started working with entrepreneurs, I was like, okay, well, this kind of coincides, because on one hand, I've got the skill as a CA in whatever it might be. But on the other hand, there's entrepreneurs that need help. So
yes.
It can be something that links my current skill set with this purpose around, serving others in a way.
Awesome. And how has your idea of the meaning of purpose changed throughout all of this? Or has it changed?
I guess it has. I mean, initially I wanted to start something within the recovery addiction space. I was like, okay, I'm going to start something. But then there's all these different links that you have to try and pull. You have to create a product, and then I didn't have the right networks, and I didn't have the right idea to birth something like that. And then along came sort of the work which I was doing with entrepreneurs, and I was like, okay, here's something which kind of coincides. And then in that work around entrepreneurship, working with South African entrepreneurs, I felt like there was a big need to focus on personal development, personal mastery items, right? Typically in the ecosystem, when it comes to entrepreneurship development stuff, most people just want to focus on what are the gaps in the business. So you come and you're like, okay, cool, here's the gaps in your business, here's your report, go fix the gaps. Whereas for me, it was like, well, we also want to look at the founder, right? Or the business owner. What are the gaps that they have? It may not be gaps, let's call it developmental areas. Right?
On sort of a personal level.
Yeah, correct. I mean, if if you're in business and you're shy of selling, or you're shy to sell,
yes,
you got to work on your selling skills, right? Now, it may show in the business that here's the gaps, your sales are not good. But now, is it going to make any sense if you're just going to write a plan to say, hey, go and sell to these people? I'm sure the owner knows that already. They just don't have they haven't developed sufficiently in that area to go and sell, right? And so once we identified that, that's when myself and my business partner came together and we said, hey, here's an opportunity. Why don't we focus holistically on the individuals and the business? And subsequent to that, we then built our technology off the back of that. So it's like unconventional CA has culminated nicely over a period of time. Right? It didn't happen overnight. We had the idea. We had to go and find clients, and then the journey starts there. Once you first find your first client and you're selling to them, you got to build for your clients, right? You can't just build on what you think might be amazing.
Yeah.
Whoever is paying whoever is giving you that money at the end of the month, they're the ones that need to kind of guide in terms of what it is they're looking for, because
yes.
ultimately you need paying clients. So I think the overlap didn't happen overnight, but it did take time to get to idea, product, and commercialization all together, because it's nice to have a side hobby or side gig to do something like this, but it's even better to get paid for it. Then at least you can focus on it fully.
Yeah, definitely. And so the idea of unconventional CA, is that because of this holistic approach, or also because you're a CA who's doing something a little bit different? Like where did the name come from?
Yeah, the name was actually interesting. So it was myself and my founder, my fellow co-founder. He originally founded Unconventional CA, and I found it like a very intriguing name at the time. And then when we aligned on the personal development side of things, and we said, hey, why don't we do something that's kind of better within the market?
Yes.
I do a lot of business coaching and mentorship as well, so I wanted to try and plug that in somehow. So as we started fitting all the elements together, he had originally selected the name, and then when we embarked on our venture, we had a conversation to say, should we rebrand, should we rename it together? But I like the name Unconventional CA. I think off the bat, people find it okay, what is it that you're doing? Okay, so you're an unconventional CA. Tell me why you're unconventional.
Yes. What makes you different from everyone else?
Yeah, correct. So it's a little bit of a conversation starter. I will say also we do get the odd joke where people say, "Are you the unconventional CA because you're unconventional ethically?"
Yeah, a little bit
But,
creative.
yeah, which we then like dismiss that immediately.
Yes.
But I think holistically the name is cool, and so we've stuck with it along the way.
Awesome. And in terms of helping entrepreneurs, and you also said you do a bit of business coaching, what are some of the kind of common challenges that you've seen that entrepreneurs face, and how have you sort of coached them to overcome those?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's so I do coaching around the world, right? So primarily the business is South Africa, and we work with local South African entrepreneurs. But I'm also a mentor on JP Morgan Techstars Atlanta. So that's a tech-focused program in Atlanta, US, because I always felt like we also want to learn what's happening around the world. And then as I started doing more and more coaching initiatives, I started to just expand. So there's the Techstars, there's Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship in Santa Clara, there's the Abu Dhabi SME Hub, so doing a little bit of coaching or business coaching in the EMEA region. And I think holistically, I think every entrepreneur is after one of two things, right? Access to markets. So how do they grow their top line and revenue, or access to finance? So to get finance for their business. But then once I sort of engage with entrepreneurs from a coaching point of view, coaching is like, I enjoy coaching because it's not consulting,
Yeah.
I find like, it's easy to say, okay, what is the gaps? Cool. Here's your report, go implement. Cool. For me, I enjoy building relationships. And coaching is more just giving a different perspective, right? So you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. Okay, cool. You're running your business. Typically, most entrepreneurs are the founders of their business and they run their business alone, right? Now, and that can be a lonely journey,
Yes.
right? And so having like a coach is firstly to confide in fully. I find like a lot of founders, you can't really share a lot with your employees,
Yeah.
right? And so having a coach, you can confide in, and then it's just to offer perspective. Okay, this is what I want to do, 1, 2, 3. Cool, let's listen to what you have to say. Let's empathize. Okay, maybe play a little bit of devil's advocate. I find those are sort of the best coaching engagements, where the entrepreneur has a general idea of where they want to go, and I'm just sort of shaping it and offering perspective. And so, yeah, I forgot what your question was, but from a coaching point of view, I think that's kind of why I enjoy the coaching.
Oh, makes sense. It's interesting. The question was about some of the challenges.
Oh,
but
the
I think
challenges,
you did
yeah.
answer the question. I was just thinking, you said that the first thing when you're trying to overcome addiction is realizing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And it's a similar kind of parallel with entrepreneurs who feel that they're very alone because they've
100%.
started this business and they need the same thing as someone to talk to and someone to bounce ideas off of, and obviously like different context. But I think it's a fundamentally human thing that we need to be able to talk to each other. And that's where you find these different perspectives that help you move, whether it's overcoming addiction or working through your new business venture.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's kind of where we're going as a business as well when it comes to unconventional CA. So our technology that we built, or the platform we built, we do like a holistic assessment from a diagnostic point of view on the individual as well as the business. But I feel like it's two-pronged, because in a world that now we're all using ChatGPT and going more AI, and AI is learning super quick, we want to try and keep that element of like the human element, involved, right? And so, kind of the way we're building the platform is to keep that human element, right? So, to understand you as an individual, what are your development areas for you as the founder of the business, right? Ultimately, AI and all these tools are going to evolve to make your life easier. But if you continuously develop, you're going to be the one driving the success of the business. Now, sort of the tool, we want to refocus it, or the tool is designed, not to refocus it, but the tool is designed to not just look at the quantitative data related in your business. It's also give you the power to check. So for example, if you're an advisor, and you want to advise your client, currently you're just looking at data and you're giving advice to your client. What we want to do is try and give you the qualitative data as well, to say, okay, is your client, from a personal development point of view, what are the areas they need to develop on, so that you're not only looking now at what are the gaps in the business, but what are the gaps, on the founder side as well.
Yeah, so it's really that holistic view. Oh, that's awesome.
Cool, thanks.
I suppose from your perspective, what unique value do you think that small business owners provide? What do they have compared to if you look at like huge organizations? What's something that's special about smaller organizations? Why do you like to work with them?
I think like smaller organizations are most of the time like purpose driven, which I enjoy, and there's a lot more fire, from when you deal with a small organization, right? And I think that's where like large organizations, decision making takes long. There's not a lot of fire because you can't really change things very quickly, and so they much rather work with like consultants or the big consulting firms to be like, okay, give me a guide, cool, I'll give it to the team to implement, right? And that typically takes longer. Whereas working with small businesses, if we can just, I find like if I can just change the perspective of that business owner, like, because ultimately what you're trying to do from a coaching point of view is not to tell them what to do. You want them to get to their spark quicker. Because if you have a brainwave and something sparks in your mind around something, you're gonna generate that own energy to go and change what needs to change, right? Whereas I can come in and say, hey, you need to fix 1, 2, 3, 4, and most of us, tend to. It's not a positive thing when somebody comes to you and tells you to change all these things, right? You first feel like, okay, well, am I inadequate? You have your own insecurities, defensive, all of that. Whereas if somebody just comes and says, hey, here's a different perspective, look, and then you come to your spark, that's my aha moment. That's what I was looking for. If you get to your aha moment, that change is going to just amplify you're going to use that energy, and that change is exponential. And so I think that's probably the main enjoyment that comes with working with small businesses, is when you can get them to reach their spark moment, and then you just see the rapid change, from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're in a small business, the impact that the founder has is just so much bigger than where everything's kind of rooted down in a bigger organization.
100%.
And so to kind of wrap things up here today, we've spoken a lot about how important it is to have your community, to have people that you're speaking to. So how can the friends and family of small business owners support them?
Oh, your friends and family have to be your first advocates. They have to be your first customers. I think if you do have an idea, whatever it might be, go and beg, borrow, and steal from family first.
Yes.
Well, let me take that. I issue a disclaimer with that. But yeah, friends and family play a vital role in ensuring that initial business success. Both from being customers to potentially being networkers. To doing your Google reviews for you. You have to leverage on friends and family to get all of that stuff out of the way, and then to just generally talk about your business, so that you can have a good foundation, to take it to the next level.
So, and if there's one thing that listeners take away from today's podcast, what would you like that to be?
I think it's if you're an entrepreneur out there, know that you're not alone. So there's a lot of different events, for entrepreneurs to attend. So we've also started something called Fireside Chats, where it's just a casual evening, entrepreneurs coming together to network. We try to get like executives or HR, a different array of people, just to come out there and chat to fellow entrepreneurs, chat to people in corporate, just to create like a safe space. And I'm sure you guys at SIFT have some awesome initiatives as well. So as an entrepreneur, just know that you're not alone, and see what events and opportunities exist out there for yourself.
Yeah, and build a network for yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
So thanks so much for joining me, Jameel.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.